Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, a show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Jan Kamiński and I'm the co-founder of AppLover, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. Our guest today is Uli Fluhme, CEO and founder of GFNY. Hi.
Hi, Jan. Thanks for having me. Great to be on your podcast.
We'll start with something short, or maybe not short, but we will start with something that we always ask our guests. So your backstory. So could you tell us the backstory about what brought you to this particular career path?
Without explaining what my career now is, what GFY is, because I'm sure not all the listeners or the majority does not know what GFY is. I am an athlete. I'm an endurance athlete. I think since I'm 16, 15, I started being a bike racer. And always really enjoyed that. Later turned into doing triathlon, Ironman, and always like any endurance was a marathon runner. I really enjoyed. On a professional side, I was a lawyer and banker, and that's something that I got into. I would say because of family. It's something the family does, and because I didn't really know what to do in terms of what job I want to be in later. So study law, I can do a lot of things with that, which turned out to be true. And worked in banking, was a hedge fund lawyer, worked in several offices around the world, also in New York. But it was my passion. It paid well, but I felt like trapped in an office. And I did that for 6 years. And then there came the time to say, it's enough and do something else.
By the way, how did you combine that? I mean, you were a former athlete or an athlete and simultaneously a banker.
And yeah, no, I didn't really combine that. So when I was doing triathlon, still training 20, 25 hours a week, I was studying law. So I did this outside the studies. I started early morning, I studied at night, had my own schedule, something I really enjoyed and was able to train a lot. As soon as I started working, I actually dropped the cycling, the swimming, and became a marathon runner where you can run an hour in the morning before work and an hour in the evening after work and combine that better.
Yeah, right. Cycling is more time consuming.
It is for sure.
Just running. But so 25 hours a week, that's intense. Probably during the weekends or during the week as well.
No, you train every day. Some days it's 2, 3 hours, some days it's 7, 8 hours, but on average over the year it's 25 hours. So some weeks are 35 hours, some weeks are maybe 15 hours. So it's very intense. I raced in the pro category, not as a good professional, but in the category for a couple of years. So at that level, everybody trains a lot. Ironman is like 8 hours, 9 hours out there. So you got to be training for that.
Yeah, that's true. But okay, but we'll come back to that later. You mentioned the GFNY. So how did the idea or inspiration for the company come from?
GFNY are mass participation cycling races. It's essentially like a marathon, but for cyclists. So everybody's competing together, whether it's the professionals at the front or the people who want to finish at the back. You're looking at 120, 160 kilometer long races. And we do these all around the world now. We started in New York in 2010 to organize this. The way it came about is that as a bike racer, I always enjoyed this kind of racing, which only really existed in Italy. In the 90s, I started doing this, and I really enjoyed having one big loop, even as an amateur, being able to race courses that usually only the professionals do. And I kept doing this aside being a triathlete, aside working, just out of passion for the sport of cycling. And when I came to New York, I really fell in love with the city of New York, but it lacked an event like that, a mass participation cycling race. So there is the New York City Marathon, of course, that probably everybody knows about, biggest marathon in the world, but there's no equivalent in a cycling race. And my future wife that I met there running, she was also a triathlete, and I said, "You got to experience Confronto. Let's go to Italy and do one of those there." So that was in May 2010. We traveled to Italy. I showed her one of those races, and although she has done many Ironmans at that point already, she said, "This is amazing. This is so hard. This is unbelievable. We need to do this in New York." And it was for me at a time where I, wanted to get out of banking, wanted to get out of law because I didn't feel it was me. I felt like I was wasting my life away in an office. Someone who likes to be outside, someone who likes to move. And at the time, I was working in New York, and the company wanted me back in Switzerland, where the company originates from, to work there. And I said, I don't want to leave. I'm going to quit, and we're going to put on a race like that in New York.
Because you mentioned that at the beginning that you were an athlete, then you moved to obviously lawyer, banking, and career in law and finance. But so that was the inspiration that motivated you to turn back to endurance sports, not as an athlete, but like maybe as an organizer, right? But that was the inspiration, like, or what was?
Just passion for it, just seeing that I really enjoy my time to be on the bike, to be around this. I was really, this is what I am, this is what I'm into, this is what I want to spend my life with, and finding ways to say work in this. I was not at the level to be a professional athlete. Also, that is something that ends when you're 30 or something like that. So that wasn't even on the cards. And just seeing this opportunity in the market in New York to say, actually, that is something that could be really successful in New York. And I want to bring this sort of racing around the world, from Italy to New York first and then to other countries. That was the motivation, and in the 6 years that I worked as a lawyer in banking, I was working in 3 different countries. So I was always sent around. So I appreciated the opportunity that I got. And if it wouldn't have been for that, I would have quit much earlier. I was quickly bored with the job. So being at least in different cultures and different countries kept me going as long as I did. But when this come along, and meeting my wife, who has also banking background and a bit more of a business background than I do, really putting our forces together and get this off the ground. There was no like bigger picture beyond doing this once. We just wanted to do that. This is and take it from there. It was sort of like on a whim. I didn't have kids. I didn't have any responsibilities. I had some savings that I could put into that. So it was a chance to take, and I was in a position where I could take that risk and just jump off the cushion, the golden handcuffs, as we say, from banking, and go into that.
Okay. And was it easier to start that in New York? I know you wanted to transit, let's say, the rules of those tournaments in fact from Italy originally to New York, but did it help? Are there any amateur endurance athletes, or was it an obstacle or an advantage?
I mean, I always say, like, if it doesn't exist yet, then there's a reason for it. And the reason there is that it's extremely difficult. Like, if it would have been easy, someone else would have done it before. We kind of went into it blind a little bit and didn't really know what to expect. There was no precedent for this, how to start that. So we just jumped in head first and tried to piece it together. We needed a course, we needed the approval for a course, we needed all the permits. We were unknowns. We had no connections to people who are, pulling the strings. The good thing about America is that it still does give you chances that many European countries don't do. So the American dream for us really became that. I grew up in Germany and once born there, and then living around the world. I'm American now. And for me, the American dream became true. This is something, my wife was in her late 20s. I was in my mid 30s when we started this. And in Europe, in the traditional countries, you get laughed out the door at that age. Everybody is in their 60s, and unless you know them and you work your way up, you're not supposed to start something like that. So it was very hard, but it was also that you were given a chance if you just, insisted on it.
If you can tell us more about the whole roadmap, like what are the specific aspects of running a business like that, especially operating from New York City, but then going globally?
Yeah. So we started in 2010 organizing, and the first race was in Levin in New York. We say, okay, you need a course, you need a permit for start and finish. You need to go over 100 miles through all these towns. So for every little town, every road, you need a permit. And just really going there and asking for it and getting a no and go back and getting a no and go back. And for those of you who may know Manhattan, there's two ways to basically get off the island. There's the Lincoln Tunnel and there's the George Washington Bridge. We didn't want to, we wanted to start in New York because otherwise it wouldn't have been a New York race. So you needed to get off the island. We didn't want to go through a tunnel, which is like not a great experience on a bike. So there's George Washington Bridge. So Lydia, she is extremely persistent. She went to the Port Authority, who is responsible for all the ports and bridges in New York and the airports, and said, we want to close the bridge, world's busiest bridge, just for our cyclists to do a race. They just laughed her out the door. And she called again and she called again. And by the 10th time, they realized they can't get rid of her and came up with a crazy number. Well, if you pay us $100,000, we're going to close it for 2 hours. You can stage your cyclist and you can leave. And we just said yes. They couldn't believe it. We said yes. We didn't know how we pay for it, but we said yes, and we got to get it done. And then we got that, and from there on, we said, okay, now we have a start. Now we can get off the island. Now we need to get a course, and from there on, we pieced it together. We got some good support, some not so good support, some, town mayors that said no bicycles in my village. And, those are the challenges that we fought through, and we had some good alliances that helped us in the end to make the race happen against the odds that no one believed even the day before. And, before that, marketing into riders to tell them to come to do it, all of it. And then the race happened, and we said, that was great. We lost money. It doesn't matter. Let's do this again. And, it grew from there until 2014. We did it in New York, 4 editions. And then riders came to us and said, like, I want to do this again next weekend. Do this again. It's like, well, we can't do this again next weekend. This is a years of work that goes into this event. But why don't you go to Europe, go to Italy? They have a lot of great races, and just enjoy it there. And riders didn't do it. They said, oh, I don't speak the language. I don't know where to go. So there was this challenge. And at the same time, we had some riders come to us and say, hey, I'm from Mexico. I want to do this in my country. What do I do? And they said, I want to do an event like you with your brand in my country. And that's how it started, that we did one in Italy and one in Mexico and in Colombia. And it spiraled from there, that we had mostly riders who did our race, loved the idea, loved the concept, and wanted to bring the same to their country.
These were the beginnings, and then it started scaling. But in essence, you're mainly working with public entities as the, let's say, partner organizer, right? And then there are private entities that are sponsoring or helping within the organization. Am I correct?
So in the organization, our organization now is, some races are owned by headquarters, how we call ourselves. That was meaning we operate the races. All our French races are operated like that. But many, and this is our preferred way, is franchises. So we have a local organizer, a local company organizing in their country the races under our brand. So they're getting the brand rules, we're taking care, we're helping them that they get it set up right, that it follows our guidelines. A franchise, just like McDonald's is a franchise, everybody can run it. It has to be looking in that way. So it's all privately organized. You work with governments to get the support. Either you pay your way on the streets, literally, depending on where it is, or you're in a place that needs the tourism that comes with our cyclists who stay there for a week and spend a lot of money to race there. And they say, okay, we help you financially as part of a tourism funding project to come to our town and have a race there. So it's the stakeholders are governments on one side and private companies who organize the races, and obviously also private companies who are sponsors of the races, whether it's a beer company for the post-race beer or a bike company who sponsors the bikes and stuff like that.
Okay, what's the scale right now? I saw obviously when I was doing the research, I saw that you organize over 35 events. But what's the scale of riders and cities, and what's the main continent that you focus on?
We're very strong in the Americas, in North America and in Latin America. That's our core, where we come from. We are now getting very strong also in Europe, where cycling is traditionally where cycling is coming from, but it's a more saturated market. So we need to find our place there. There's not as much request for what we do. And we're starting to grow more in Asia as a very new market, just like we started the market basically in Latin America. We're, breaking ground in Asia, where there's a lot of riders who want to have this kind of experience. And the next step then is Africa. So our goal is really to be globally present, to have a GFNY near every road cyclist, basically to do locally, but also give experiences for cyclists from around the world to travel to a destination and experience cycling there. Because like all the sports, it brings people together. Whether, it doesn't matter, skin color, religion, country, wherever you come from, whatever language you speak, we speak the language of sport. It's fun. We start together. We're all cyclists. You find yourself in a group with riders from all over the world, but you understand you work together because you speak cycling. And I think it's a great thing to experience and do like an active vacation that it is for a lot of people.
And how do you see the future of sporting events like that? And not only the future of GFNY, but those kind of events in general.
I look at sports as something that is mostly healthy. Obviously, at the peak of many sports, it's all just entertainment, meaning you have a, not in, engaged sedentary participant, like someone watching, say, soccer, for example, but really, really excited about bringing riders to events that actually participate themselves in what they see also at the top level, meaning we have a professional race with the top guys who are doing this as for living with the big teams. They're doing the race, and then like 15 minutes later, the amateurs are doing the same course and get to experience to race the same thing. Really, to use sport as health, because we all know that for mental and physical health, exercise is very important. And there's not, you don't have to do it 25 hours a week to reap the benefits of it. And I think having events as we provide them really helps you to get to exercising that is not fun every day. There's a little bit like toothbrushing. Sometimes you just have to get it done because it's part of what keeps you healthy, what keeps you engaged in life, what is good for you. So having an event, having a goal that you can train towards is good because it keeps you motivated, it keeps you getting out of the door. We're organizing group rides, training rides for groups together in various locations with that big goal of the event. And I see that as something also for the future, that more and more people can be engaged in the sport itself and not letting professional go, because the professional sports is important as well, whether it's for the young people to have the role models, or even for older people like me to have the fun to watch what the really good guys can do. I think both really complements each other, and one doesn't work without the other.
We had a few guests from the technology world, I mean, in a sense, in a sporting technology world. But I want to know, and we talked a lot about how technology helps and how it sometimes it doesn't. But I wanted to know your angle on that. How right now, especially when it comes to cycling, is technology affecting that? I mean, IoT or maybe some data management or trainings in that. Is it like, is there anything happening there in this particular industry?
Do you want to look at for us as the organizers or a rider?
Well, both. We can start with you and then and then the riders in general.
For us, it's big, of course. Every company has to, be strong in IT. We created a unique registration platform where every of our participants, wherever they are, has an account. So you get your GFNY account, and in this account, you have all your races, you have all your medals that you're collecting, you have all your results, and you can easily register through this account because it all has your data and everything. It helps us on our end to obviously collect the data that we need to make the races a better experience, whether it's for the check-in that is easy, for the registration, or at the end to distribute, the finisher certificates that our rider want, or know where the riders are going. So all of that is extremely important. Or even going back, if you're looking at social media and the technology behind it, our company was really built on modern marketing. We were among the first ones who were happy to pay for social media ads when big companies didn't do that yet, because we saw this as a huge opportunity and in a way to scale, and compared to a traditional marketing and sales. So I think as any business, it's very important. It's a big thing for us. We have lots of future plans around that.
Yeah, but also I think as a target group, I mean, cyclists are, it's a good group. I mean, this is a group that actually leaves a lot of money into the sport, and obviously the events and gear and everything that and I think it's a strong focus group.
Yes.
But riders in general, I mean, cycling in general and technology, but also from the amateur perspective or professional. Did you see, you've been doing this for so many years?
Ever.
Yeah. So did you
When I
see?
pack out the old stories, my wife always says, "Oh, you're a dinosaur."
Yeah. So did you see the transition there in
Yeah, I
technology?
totally saw it. I mean, I started when it was analog, and then the first things were the small digital computers where you got your distance and your speed into the heart rate monitors. So I was really young when that started. And now the power meters where you can measure, the force you're applying to your pedals, and really your power output you can ride in an equal power output no matter the wind or the hills or whatever you're tackling. So that is a huge thing. And now we're getting into technology that you get things implanted to measure your blood glucose levels and stuff like that. So I am a little unique in the sense that I see cycling and endurance sports as something where technology is very important, but as you said, can also be a problem. I think technology is huge for beginners and it's huge for professional cyclists at the top level. But I do think there's also this middle part of an already experienced cyclist that has to have the ability to let go of the technology to really understand their body themselves. I, as a young rider, used heart rate monitor to understand what my heart does when I'm riding, about the effort. But after using it for a year, I could remove my heart rate monitor and I could tell you my heart rate by 3 to 5 beats per minute because I just felt it. I know what I was doing. And that was hugely important for me, that I wasn't dependent on it that I knew how my body was reacting to certain things. So I feel like especially sports nowadays has to be something that gets us out of our daily lives. Our phones gets us away from technology. I'm guilty as everyone. If I look at my phone, I use it 8 to 10 hours per day. It's ridiculous. And that includes me being on the bike 2 to 3 hours. We look at it all the time. And I feel like our sports, endurance sports, gives us the ability to actually step away from that and go back to the basics and live it without technology. I mean, there is obviously an argument to be made that modern technology can help you improve your performance, and I'm not going to negate that. But I think I see the risk and I see the problem for a lot of cyclists that are coming to this after 2, 3, 4 years that are slaves to the technology. If their computer doesn't work, the power meter, they're not going to go cycling. It doesn't matter how nice it is out or how they have the time. There's a technical problem. They're actually not going to do it. And I think that is a slavery that is the other extreme of it. So it's a way you got to find the balance. And at the professional level, you absolutely need this because it's peak performance and technology can help there. But I also think in professional cycling, we need to take it away for the races, use everything in training, and then we need to take it away for the races to keep the races interesting. Because I don't know who knows what about professional racing. A lot of it gets done from the race car. So your team director sits in the car, you have radio contact to the rider, you get the blood glucose levels, you get everything, you see the power meter, they have the data in their car. They can tell them attack now, wait 2 minutes, now you got to eat, wait 5 minutes. So we become more and more robots of the team director sitting in the car. And I don't think that's the idea of sports, because sports at the end of the day is play. And applying ourselves without technology. Otherwise, it's Formula One, which has its place, but it's in a different sport.
Your point would be that obviously big data analysis for sport, training is crucial in a sense, but also it can make an athlete doomed, right? So he'll be too dependent on the analysis. I mean, on the analyst, but not on his own, let's say, knowledge about his body and the sport.
Yeah, and especially for a recreational rider, you got to figure out like at what level you're racing. If you're racing, what are you going for? Are you actually going to win something? Is it that important, or are you overdoing it? And I think I see this in cycling, where, as you mentioned earlier, you have a lot of people that are very successful in their professional life. Those are people that at the highest jobs, and they're using IT. They have a high IQ. They want to apply data. They want to apply technology because that's how they know it. That's how they apply it in their jobs, and it's very hard for them to step back and not do that. So I understand it. And for some people, data is just fun, playing around with it, collecting it, even if they don't do anything with it, even if it's data garbage at the end they are creating. If they have fun with it, to each its own. I'm not going to say you're not allowed to do it. I do see, though, that you have to have the ability to understand your body if you want to become a better athlete.
Right. But for example, because you mentioned that slightly at least, but what would be the advice that you would give to an amateur athlete or a team who who are considering utilizing or implementing any training software platforms, data management platform services in general in their training programs,
No, absolutely. I think that's what's there. And it's one thing to have a training data program, something where you can combine who's training what and get all the information and all what you should do. And the other thing is how you execute your training. If you become a slave to the plan, or if you understand that your body is not a robot and can't do what you tell them every day, and you have to have at that moment the ability to step back and say, how do I feel today? Is this feeling normal? Is it going to go after half an hour? Is it go away? Am I going to warm up and going to feel great, or am I not? And what am I going to do in this situation? And I think really getting a mature athlete and going into this and being able to, here's the plan and that's the theory, but what am I going to apply? So I think you can't do without a plan. I think without a plan is hard. Very few people are successful without any plan, but you have to have the plan and then the flexibility how to apply it. And you got to know yourself. I think this data can do a lot for you, but there's certain things that, at least with the technology from today, that we don't know why your body does react the way it does. It's a bit of like the butterfly theory. There's one thing you change in the day before in your nutrition, and it has an effect on a lot of things. And only you know how your body reacts to something. Your coach can give you advice; they might know it quite well, but at the end, it's you and only you who knows what's in the back.
I also wanted to talk more about the future of cycling in a sense. And I know you're a cycling evangelist, but in your opinion, obviously, what would be, I mean, or what are the most important trends in this discipline? And so that's my first question. And the second, are those trends going to promote this discipline, or are we rather going toward a different kind of, or any important change in that particular discipline?
We're going more into digital and everything. We're going to have more integration in our bodies with IT. That is normal. That is something that I personally don't have to be a fan of or like or be in favor of to see that. So I'm not going to close my eyes to what's going to happen. So there's definitely a future thinkable where you're fully connected to a system, even an AI that helps you to perfect everything. And that may be something that our kids want to go into. They grow up with this, they have a chip implemented, and it all helps them to get better, faster, to have even more fun, maybe, possibly. It's just a different thing. Do I think it might be the right thing? Maybe not. Maybe it goes too extreme and people are turning away from it and saying, no, I don't want that. That is not what I wanted sport to be for. And there might be a counter, initiative, say, drop everything. I'm leaving my phone home. I have no chip in myself. I'm going to be completely off the grid for the 2 hours, for the 3 hours that I'm doing my exercise. I just want to feel my body. I don't want anyone else to interfere with it. I think both is possible. I think probably it's going to go more in the first direction. I think cycling on a professional level will become more like Formula One, that the driver is just part of the whole summary of everything. And even the driver, the rider, the cyclist, the pilot will be partially bionic. You could argue that they are today also already bionic. If you take the drugs that are already involved in cycling, you could say those are not normal humans anymore because they take so many drugs. It makes them bionic. So what does a chip implemented under your skin that gives you extra information? What does that actually make it different? You're already bionic. So it's just might be a slow evolution into this. It is what it is. Like I think our parents' generation, our grandparents could imagine what we do today. For us, it's completely normal, and it will be the same for the younger generation. That's how life works.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bionic approach and the substances. I know you're an anti-doping advocate in general. You're a strong
Yes.
supporter of those rules and the testing. And could you share your insights and thought on that as well?
Yeah, I'm anti-doping because I think, sports only really makes sense if we compete with what we're given. At the moment, we are putting chemicals in addition, and even if we would say everybody gets to take the same chemicals, then everybody reacts differently to what they're given. So there's what we call good responders to drugs and bad responders. A good responder is you give them a little bit of something and they're exploding, and they would not be good without it. So you get a completely tilted picture of what actually would be the level of the athletes, and it makes it to a show that might be fun to watch, but it is, you could put a motor in the bikes, which also happens occasionally, and have them race on motorbikes, and it's all just a show anymore. So I think the pureness of sports is really what can you do with your body? What can you achieve out of your flesh and blood at the end without anything else, and make it a that. And that's what makes me anti-doping. And the other thing is, children. I have 3 little kids, and I don't want them to take things that are, by a good chance, not healthy for the body. I see long-term effects of doping. You see all the athletes that have massive health issues, heart issues, that die early from the drugs. And I think we're not ready as a society to really accept that. I think right now it's kept at a level, because doping is at the technology that it sort of suppresses it. We're not talking about it, but if we would say free for all in doping, you can do what you want. We would have to be ready for athletes dropping dead on the soccer field. They just don't stand up anymore. We have to be fine with that, because obviously there are voices now that say, well, we can't control doping. Why don't we allow it? I think at the moment that we are fine with that. I think at the moment that we find that 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds die doing sport, we can do that. I think none of us is really fine with that. And that's why I'm still an anti-doping advocate. And I think anti-doping is one of the things, it's a fight that cannot be won, but it's, I think, a fight that is worth being fought nonetheless.
Why do you think it cannot be won? In a sense that technology is always faster and
Yes.
there are new.
Yeah, it's a step ahead. The cheating is, you're a step ahead always of the controls. It's very hard to control everybody at the same time. It's very costly. There might be a time in the future where testing is easier, complete transparency of what a body is. That might be where technology could go. This could be a benefit of technology if you have chips implemented. But I think the moment you do add technology, you know this better than I do, you can also manipulate it. So I'm not too optimistic about that. It's very easy to become cynical about doping, and I've been at that point a lot. And I have a hard time watching professional sports and really enjoying it. But I have this fight in myself that I've started watching the Tour de France, for example, as an 8-year-old with my dad. That's 40 years ago now. And I still watch it occasionally because I just can't. I love the sport. I love what it does. I love what it did to my life beyond what I do now as a kid, what sport does and what heroes does, what you have these role models that keep you motivated as a young guy to go into this and keep doing the sport. Even if you stop at 2022, for the development of young people, it's amazing. So
Mhm.
can't let it go.
Why is that so? That, of course, out of all the endurance sports like running, triathlon, I think that the biggest, I mean, or the most famous scandals around doping were with cycling. I think, like from the PR perspective, it just had
Yes.
some bad PR.
You could call it bad PR. I think it's, to me, at the end, it's good PR. The more that comes out, the more you see that actually testing is happening. I always say you can't test positive if you don't test. So if there's more testing, it's better. So I always like it when I see positive tests coming because I know the reality that most are doping. So at least something is happening. The other sports aren't better, whether it's athletics or swimming or whatever. I don't know any sport where there's no doping. There is no sport there is less doping. It's everywhere. I think in cycling, why it came out the way it is, I don't know. As an endurance sports, obviously you benefit more because you don't have much skills involved. Throw yourself down a mountain at 100 kilometers an hour maybe is a skill, but it's not a skill like soccer. Like you can't run like they do for 90 minutes without doping, but playing with a ball is a skill that you're born with or not. So you have at least a little more of that element. And in cycling, it's at the end who pedals the hardest to really simplify it. So drugs help more at the end. So I think in the endurance sports, in the power sports, it's more prevalent from that way perspective.
No, sure. I get that. And you mentioned that. So you mentioned the passion for sport and the passion for this particular discipline, so cycling. And I know you were passionate about this, but did it help in business, or like, were there any things that were very similar, or you learned a thing or two out of it that helps you succeed it?
What I always loved about sport is the black and white of a results list at the end of a race. That is really something that I miss in life and where everything is politics in business. It's something I struggle with. What I'm not good at. Um, so I think what I took from sports into my other life is perseverance, not giving up, because especially as a single discipline athlete, like not a team sport, you lose almost every time. Like you rarely win anything. I had a year where I maybe won 2 races. I had years you win nothing because it's just you have hundreds and thousand people to compete against, and that top 10 is a huge success. And I think losing again and again and getting up and trying again and performing better and improving is what I took into business, that you have to keep at it. And I think there is a lot of luck involved in business, but not much talent and much things together. If you keep going at it, if you keep doing it, there's going to be something that comes out of it that works for you.
And you're also, except for the company we discussed, you're also involved in NYC Sports Management, which is a company, as I saw, that is dedicated to providing sport management services, but mainly for endurance athletes. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's something that I haven't done actively in the last years. That's something I did earlier when we say only had the race in New York. I was a coach a little bit. I was helping athletes, get contracts, helping them with the training, a little bit of that. Something I was, looking into getting into while I was still working as a lawyer because I didn't like what I was doing in banking. Just making rich people richer was too meaningless for me. I didn't really go deeper into it because then GFNY really took off and took all of my motivation. It's something I can see myself going back into. I still get, do some consultant for people, for athletes when it comes to doping, for example, when they have problems with other athletes where they know that they're doping, they come to me, they know that I'm active in this field. They ask me what to do, how to approach this, who to talk to. So that's something I still do, more of a passion project on the side. Trying to, do my part of cleaning out sports as much as possible. But so GFNY is really the thing that we do right
Okay, so
now.
that was before. That was before
That
the
has started before. That was part of what I did when we had GFY in New York in the first 2 3 years, and I had more time the rest of the year. But now having a race every weekend, sometimes two or three, there's no more time for that. Isn't a focus right now. It's more like a passion I do on the side, a project, but not what I do as well.
Mhm. And okay, and for obviously after COVID, I think endurance sports had a peak, and everyone started running and cycling. At least
That's
that
right.
was yeah, that was my opinion. But you mentioned something about the future of the company. We were talking about this, but from this perspective, like, what is the next step? You just want to expand in a sense for locations and the scale of it, or is there another, let's say, like a business line? Maybe you get into a different sport, maybe triathlon. Like, what's the general plan like for that for GFNY?
Yeah, I think it's several things. It's having more events. I think I'm not going to put a number on it, but if you want a number, I would say 100 is a good number that we would be looking at into 2 to 3 years to have this amount of events. We already are in running. We're organizing marathons in Florida. We organized one. We organized the Quito City Marathon as a former marathon runner. That's a natural extension for me. Triathlon is something I wouldn't rule out. It's a little more niche. It's a little a different market. I know how to do it because I was really also a freak about doing triathlons and nerd around that sport. So if the opportunity would come along, we would do that as well. But we also already have a, endurance sports apparel brand that we have in cycling. So we do apparel. We're having other things we do on the side. We have a club. We have a coaching platform. So anything around the sport is what we're going to do. In more events, we're going to more into the professional side, meaning in New York next year, we're going to organize a professional race 15 minutes before the amateurs. So broader in the sport, staying in that, I think, is we have a lot of our hands. We are now the largest mass participation cycling series in the world, but we're not big enough. And I think there's still many pockets in the world that would love to have a GFNY like we do it. And we have dedicated people who want to travel around the world with GFNY to experience locations. And I always say, you'll never regret the trip you do in your life and the experience that comes with it. And if everybody would have the chance to travel the world, there would be no wars, there would be no disagreements, because at the end, we're all people and we all just have to get along. And, everybody wants to just live their lives. And, we live in our country and we get told by the media how other people are. But if you have the chance to travel somewhere and see them, just get up in the morning, do their breakfast, and go to work and just live their lives with the family. You see, we're all at the end the same and want the same. And sport is also as that and has taught me that in my life when I was an active athlete, that traveling can really expand your horizon. I want to give more of those opportunities also to cyclists and around the world.
It's an interesting topic. Except of obviously promoting the sport, you're also promoting the even as an organization, you're promoting the pro health attitude. But I want to tackle this as well. What challenges were you facing? You mentioned some organizational ones, but for example, what were the other ones? For example, in the section of promotion of pro health attitude or any others, while developing the brand and the
I,
events.
the toughest part is obviously convincing a government that having an event like this is a good idea. So unlike a concert, which is in a concert in a stadium or something, everything is in one place. I always say we are like a wedding party with 5,000 people, but they're not staying at one place. On Sunday, after they were there for 2 days on an expo and registration and having sitting together, they're getting on a 150-kilometer course, and not all at the same time. At some point, there's 5 hours difference between the first and the last. So closing roads and having governments understand what cycling does to whether it's the local population or health in general is not easy, because everybody is fighting for public money and public space. So we have to be respectful for that. As an organization, we don't want to be a burden to the locals. We don't want to lock them in on a whole Sunday so they can't go everywhere. So working around this always has to have been the biggest challenge, and financing the events that are very expensive and sometimes cost as much as $2 million for the New York event, some that is as much as If you look at two stages of the Tour de France, one the third world largest event in the world, cost as much as one day of an event that we do because it's in the biggest city of the world. So I think it's a huge challenge. And then the COVID comes and 90% of our events are not allowed to happen. Everybody is locked in their homes. In some countries, they were luckiest than others. They were at least allowed to go out to do their sport, but not allowed to do events. So
What
I
did you
think that
do
was
then?
a
What did you do then, by the way, during COVID?
it was tough. It was tough. We fought
Quit?
for any race we could do. In some countries, they were better. They said, okay, you can do it. Here's the things you have to do to keep it safe. And other countries, like, no way, you're not going to do it. We don't want that. And we had to just postpone the events by years, sometimes 2 years. So it was hard. You have to furlough staff. It was very tough. And I think one of our industry was the hardest hit. It's, at the end, it's travel industry, but it's not just travel. It's travel with your bike. It's travel to far destinations. It's like the last thing people do in their life. It's like this upper luxury after, like, living your life and your job and then vacation with the family. The last thing is traveling somewhere with your bike for your hobby. So it was
Yeah.
tough. That definitely was a huge challenge.
We talked about the general plans and the future and the challenges, but like from your perspective, right? Because we constantly study the impact of sports on the personalities of the entrepreneurs and not only, but what was your most extreme sport event experience? You mentioned triathlon. I don't know if that was just Ironman or
Yes.
ultra Ironman. And what
No. Yeah.
have you drawn any conclusions, or is that, I mean, because I'm always interested in the personalities, is that this extreme sports or endurance sports, but on a very like hard level in a sense, are those influencing your work?
It does, and I think it does not only in a positive way, it could be in a negative way as well, because I mentioned it earlier, what I really always enjoyed about sports is the results at the end of the race. It's black and white. This is how you are. This is where you are. You want to be better, you got to be faster next time. You got beaten, here's 1, 2, 3. And that's just not how the rest of the life works. It's all politics. It's a lot of, you're schmoozing. It's a lot of talking to people, knowing people, something that I'm personally not good at all. So that's always been a challenge for me. But then again, I got my first job at the bank in Switzerland because I was an athlete, because my boss was an athlete as well. And he said, I want a person like that because I know these guys, they can put their head through the wall. They have perseverance, they have discipline, they get up in the morning, they don't drink, they have a good lifestyle, so they get the job done. So it helped me in that way. And, obviously, if you race Ironman towards the end of an Ironman in the marathon, I've been in positions you don't know if you come back. I mean, I've been to places in my mind with pain. You don't know. It's literally like that if you're going to survive that. And I've had a marathon in New York. You run at a pace, it's pain from after an hour, and it's 2.5 hours of running. And I finished the race and I had a great time. I could never go back to that place. I was done racing after that. Yeah, I had to dig so deep in the race. I had to go to dark places, as athletes keep telling you that, probably endurance athletes. And it's something where you don't want to go anymore, where you get into the reserves of your body. And the mental block is the last thing. Your body stops you from going there, and it's your brain not going there. And if you push and push and push and push, you can go to places. And it destroyed me. And it's like, it's a pain you don't want to revisit. And if you don't want to revisit, I've known athletes that said, and I'm going to train so hard that I don't have to go there in a race anymore, that the race is going to be easier, which obviously isn't possible because you have to. And that's often the end of a career for an athlete, an endurance athlete. Most end like that. They say, I just can't go to those places anymore that are necessary to go to. And that's not something that does help you at the end of the day in business, because there's nothing in business where you have to go to a place like that. It's the opposite. It's patience, something I don't have. It's talking to people. It's looking back. It's evaluating everything. So there's a lot of things in sports that can also go be deconstructive to what actually is needed in business or in life in general. I think in summarizing, it's absolutely beneficial, and I don't regret having done it. And being an athlete has helped me a lot, but it's not all positive, of course.
Yeah, but you meant that you also said something very interesting, that when you're one of your that in your previous work, when the boss hired you, he knew that you're an athlete. There were some skills that helped you, and he knew that if you have them in sport, They are obviously helpful in the business, but when you're on the other side, for example, people that work with you are also from
Yes.
athletes or people from the business, or not really? Do you
I think
focus on
at
that?
the end, we've had both, and both helps. I think it's great to have athletes and people who are passionate about the sport, because some of the roles we have that are similar to what I do, you need the passion, because otherwise you stop doing it after 2 weeks because it's too hard. It's really a passion job. It's something. It's for people that really want it. It's not something where you make big money, but they love it. They love what they're doing, so it's great to have them. But it's also good to have people who don't have that, but just get the job done. Obviously, you don't want to have this passion. And the other extreme is like if you have an egomaniac who always only thinks about training, and that's more important than the job, that doesn't help either. So, the other hand is like you hire an athlete that just needs some money on the side, all he does and is thinking of is sport. And that was me at the end doing my job as a lawyer. I was thinking, when can I get out and train again? So that's the downside. I think at the end I did my job. I'm someone who is like getting stuff done. I'm not procrastinating. I'm not good at pretending to work, something I hated in a big corporation that I worked at. All the people that just, half the day, they're just pretending to work and pretending to be busy. Everybody claims to be busy, something I never was good at. When I was done, I walked out the door, and something that also hindered my career because I looked like I'm not doing it. My boss knew I got jobs done, which was the most important, but everybody else thought I was lazy because I walked out at 4. I was like, couldn't handle sitting there until 6 doing nothing. That was really what drove me away from being in a company. And I'm glad for everybody who can do it and enjoys a job like that and dropping it on Friday evening and having the weekend off. I'm working 7 days a week, obviously, just like you do. And, I'm glad there's, someone for everything, and not everybody's like you and me, a CEO or something who's like inundated with the work all the time, where work is your life. You have
Yeah,
to want that. That's not up for everybody.
that's true. That's true. I agree completely. And we always ask this to our guests, or pretty often ask the same question closer to an end of the particular episode because it's really fun to compare it later. But what would be, or what three pieces of advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of either your sport or business career? You can pick one of those.
I'm very careful with advice because advice is something that is dependent. What to do depends on so many factors. So I try to listen. If I'm keen to learn something, I do. But I'm very slow at giving advice to people, and I wouldn't want to give advice to me because at the end, you can give advice and you can do something, but the way it turns out at the end depends on all the external factors that you can't control. So, if you ask me, I would give advice. So I wouldn't even give myself advice at this point. Do I see a lot of things that I would have liked to do different? Absolutely. I know there's a lot of things I did wrong. But there's also a lot of things I did wrong that I wouldn't be able to change because you can't change who you are at the end. So, for example, something that I miss that in myself, in a personality, is I'm not good at connecting to people. I'm not good at making connections, which is, you could say, the basis of every business. So it's one of the biggest, failures that I have in my personality, something I can't do. You can train that, obviously, but I really have to get out of my skin to be good at that. And that would be probably an advice that I would give myself, but I would give an advice that means I would, really change myself and who I am. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but there's nothing ever that you do that doesn't come at the expense of something else. So at the end, I think to be aware of, whatever you do has a consequence, and it can be good and it can be bad, and you got to be open to things. I think at the end, you just got to live your life and live with whatever you do has a consequence. And also be knowing that, if things go really well, it's not just you. There's also in everything always luck involved. And we just have to be mindful of that and say, yes, we were given this opportunity. I had a great childhood. My parents were able to take care of my education. It's like a starting point that is a dream for many. Back from then on, I did everything myself, but many don't even get the chance to get there.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been talking for like 15 minutes and didn't get a impression that you're bad at relationships, but so probably a lot of training.
A lot of training. And talking about it, you made me talk about what I've been doing for 10 years, so that's obviously easy. And
Right.
if you would have talked to me about even in a podcast 10 years ago, it would have been different also because I've done a few of those now. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I see other businesses say in my industry, and I see the CEOs of that, and you really admire what they do. But you see also the downsides. Have a very say straightforward point of view on things, and I'm very opinionated. I'm a very opinionated person, and good and bad. If I want something and I know what I want, then I stand for that. And I think I admire people who are a little more flexible. They give them a little more room to collaborate with people that are not in line with what they want. That is something I don't do. But the downside then is they have to give up a little bit of their own, beliefs and strength and what they look at. So it's always a balance.
And since we're slowly going towards the end of today's episode, just one thing: if our viewers and people are interested in this series, where they can find more information?
Just go to gfny.com and check it all out. What's there on the website? And
Okay,
on social, you'll find us obviously under the same GFNY everywhere. And you got any questions, reach out to us. We're always helping.
Nice. That's great. So Uli, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
And hope to see you soon in New York during one of the races, I hope.
That would be great, or anywhere in the world. If you see a green cycling jersey around, it's probably a GFNY jersey.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Stay in touch with us. Subscribe to our podcast. Give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.